So back around episodes 53 to I think it was 60 or 61 in this series of tips and tricks for the EOS R5, I talked about the wireless settings on the camera. We talked about Bluetooth, we talked about Wi-Fi, we talked about a lot of the problems that I had with the system. What I didn't actually cover at the time, largely because I didn't have a good protocol or plan to talk about it, simply because until recently I don't really use Wi-Fi for remote shooting, or didn't really use Wi-Fi for remote shooting. I didn't talk about sort of the practical considerations to setting up the wireless connection on your camera. So that's what we're going to talk about briefly today, or what I've found, the tips and tricks that I've run into with dealing with a remote controlling a camera over Wi-Fi. Now, the first part of this actually starts with a discussion about the connection that you're using. The camera, obviously, we're using Wi-Fi, but generally, if you are setting up the connection without having paired your camera with your device, that's your mobile device, so phone, laptop, whatever, to control it over Wi-Fi, you will have to touch and interact with the camera to establish that settings, or that setup. The only case where this isn't really the play, or really doesn't happen, is if you have already paired your camera over Bluetooth and you use the app on your phone or tablet to upgrade that connection to Wi-Fi by, say, hitting the remote shooting button and causing the camera to start remote shooting, and it will then establish a Wi-Fi connection. Now, I should take a moment on an aside of this, because there is something to be consider with this kind of upgraded connection, which is when you upgrade a connection from Bluetooth to Wi-Fi, the camera does not run on your normal wireless network. So devices like these cameras can run in two different modes with respect to Wi-Fi. One mode is called infrastructure mode, and this is where the device, the camera, your phone, computer, etc., connects to a wireless access point or wireless router like you might have on your home network, your office network, or like you would be connecting to if you were connecting, say, at Starbucks or at an airport or on a plane or in a hotel. The other way that you can run networks like these, or Wi-Fi devices, at least some of them, is what's called ad hoc mode. And in this mode, one of the devices kind of acts as the access point for that network. That's what happens when you use the Bluetooth upgrade capability. Your camera will act as an access point. Now, the consequence of doing this is that you don't or won't get the same kind of range that you might have if you were using an infrastructure network. So you could very easily, on an infrastructure network, because of access points being distributed throughout your studio or soundstage or whatever, connect to the camera and then go somewhere away from the camera and be able to still control and monitor what's going on. In ad hoc mode, because the camera is basically acting as the access point and there's nothing else for it to relay through, you will need to be within range of the camera. Now, normally this probably won't be a huge deal, but you may find that in some situations in this kind of configuration, if you went on the other side of a wall, you may lose your connection to the camera. Now, the reason I brought up the whole thing with the camera having to establish the connection and Bluetooth is because the whole point, or the whole problem that we run into with the connection side of things, is if that connection is broken. If the camera powers off, if your tablet or phone powers off, that link can be broken. It will be after a certain amount of time. And reestablishing it is going to be entirely dependent on either having access to the camera, being able to physically touch it, reestablish the connection that way, or having Bluetooth configured so that you can reestablish the connection through Bluetooth, but you will not be able to do this while the camera is recording. So when it comes to the connection side of things, I basically have two recommendations that I have found work reliably with this. First is pair your mobile device that you're going to be connecting or controlling the camera with to it over Bluetooth as well as over Wi-Fi. Well, you'll need the Wi-Fi connection for the actually live view and controlling it while it's shooting. The Bluetooth connection is there so that you can hit the live view button and reconnect to the camera once everything has been disconnected, if that so happens. The second tip here is to make it so that it's very difficult for that connection to drop out in the first place. And the way to do that is to turn off auto power off or auto lock on both the camera and any device that you are using to control it. So on the R5, you'll find the auto power off setting under the setup to menu under power savings and then auto power off, which you will set to disable. Now note, it does not matter what the viewfinder or display time offs or display off times are set to. The only one you have to be concerned about in this situation is the auto power off time. Now, of course, with the camera not going to sleep when it's not recording, we also create a problem with respect to power. And in fact, this kind of runs in as a twofold problem. First of all, having a wireless network running on the camera will increase the amount of power the camera is consuming because the wireless network is running. And second of all, because we are either going to be shooting a lot or we're never going to be turning the camera off until it's down off of that overhead rig or wherever you're using it, I should say, we aren't going to be turning it off, so that we're not going to save batteries that way. So my recommendation here is, yes, even though, especially if you have a battery grip on your camera, you can record for a couple of hours off of the batteries and the battery grip if they're fully charged. Regardless of that, my recommendation here is to use external power. Either a big USB battery bank, a cinema-style battery that has USB output, or a USB power delivery AC adapter would be my first choice because I prefer USB power delivery for this application. But certainly if you're using dummy batteries, any of the options that you could use to provide power through the dummy battery or the Canon AC power adapter stuff will work as well. So that takes care of connection and auto power off, or power, I should say. The next thing we need to think about is optimizing or maximizing our ability to record. Now remember, the R5 is still a 30-minute limited camera, so anything you shoot is going to be limited to 30 minutes at a clip. However, if you were shooting in 4K fine, 4K 60, or 8K, you'll have even shorter record times due to the thermal constraints of the camera. So to address that, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into the Shoot 8 menu to the auto power off temperature setting and set that to high. So this will be in video mode, Shoot 8 menu, auto power off temp set to high. This will cause the camera to have to get hotter before it powers off, and you'll get an extended amount of recording time out of that. Now, it's not going to double or triple or quadruple your recording time or anything like that, but it will certainly give you more. The second setting that affects this that's worth considering and is a little bit more situationally dependent is the standby low res setting. So you'll find this on the Shoot 8 menu in video mode under standby low res, and you'll have two options. One is either on or off. Now, the way that you are going to want to set this up, or what you're going to want to set this to, will depend on just what you're doing exactly. My recommendation is if you're recording in the camera, you're going to want to turn this on. Now, the reason for that is when the camera's recording, it's always going to be dealing with the sensor and image information at the highest resolution or the resolution that you selected. Now, of course, if you're shooting at 1080p or full HD, it's just going to be full HD. However, if you're shooting at 4K or 8K, when you're recording, it's going to be at 4K or 8K, but when you are not recording, so between takes or so on, then it's going to drop down to 1080p or whatever its minimum settings are, essentially so that you can monitor what's going on, but the camera won't be generating nearly as much heat. So you'll get extended recording essentially over a longer period due to the fact that you are allowing the camera to not generate as much heat, so therefore cool down some between takes. On the other hand, if you're recording the camera externally, so if you're using something like a Ninja 5 or a Ninja or Ninja Ultra or whatever, then you're going to want to turn this off. And the reason for that is, of course, if you're recording it externally and not recording internally, then you want the highest quality feed to be going out to your device to be recorded. So when you're recording on an external device and you have standby recording on, well, whenever the camera isn't recording, it will basically drop down to low resolution, which is obviously not what you want to be recording. When it's set to off, then it will always output the highest quality feed. Which brings me to another great point. If you either need to record for longer than 2 hours or longer than 30 minutes at a clip, or you just really want to be overly cautious with your record times and heat and all of that, the best thing you can actually do to maximize your recording times is use an external recorder. So in this case, you are going to, of course, turn off standby low res. You're still going to want to set your auto power off temp to high, but you're going to have to run an HDMI cable or wireless transmitter or something off to your external recorder and record from there. Now, testing has shown, I've seen this in my own testing, and I've seen a number of other YouTube videos where cinematographers have tested this, that shooting in 4K fine at 24 to 30 frames a second, which is the essentially highest resolution 4K mode the camera can do, so it's 8K downsampled to 4K. If you record externally, you can get more than 2, and in some cases up to 3 hours of continuous recording before the camera will overheat. Now, the reason, of course, for this is that, yes, the camera still has to process the sensor data, and it still has to do all of the manipulations for the color space and color temperature and log form, encoding and all of that. But it doesn't have to do the compression, and the compression is an incredibly power-hungry operation on, well, any of these cameras that are doing it with HEVC or AVC, like the R5 is. When you're using an external recorder, that compression step is being carried out by another device that's going to get hot as a result of that, not by the camera. So using an external recorder will give you both the ability to circumvent that 2-hour recording limit or that 30-minute recording limit, and it will let you shoot in 4K in fine or 4K 60 with much longer recording times than you would have if you were trying to record it in camera. So that's a practical look at some of the settings that are most impactful at extending and smoothing out your off-camera or your out-of-reach recordings using Wi-Fi to connect to the camera. If you found this useful or at least interesting, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. Finally, if you'd like to help and support this channel, you can help us by liking this video, sharing it with your friends that you think would be find it useful on social media, or leaving a comment. And you can help support this channel by either hitting that thanks button or buying yourself something you've always wanted from one of the affiliate links in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.